Wilson baby's tall and thin, 5'7" of bones and skins. But when he tells me maybe he loves me, I feel as whirly as a girlie can be. I hear the sound of good solid judgment whenever you talk loud and clear. Yet there's that bold brave spring to the tiger, the quick and Joe.
Hi everybody, welcome to Aimee Nolte Music. Welcome to my new series called Hearing the Difference. What did you think? What did you think of those two ladies that you just heard? Could you tell the difference between them? Today we're trying to tell the difference between Nancy Wilson and Dinah Washington. Now, why are we doing this? Good question. I'd like to take two people that kind of have similarities to each other. Musicians all across the board. We'll be looking at saxophone players, trumpet players, whatever. And I'll be trying to teach you how to tell the difference between the two of them. Now, some people might say that Nancy Wilson and Dinah Washington don't mix them up, like they don't have any trouble telling the two of them apart. Good for you. I don't either, but I used to. I think that they both have some similarities. They both kind of put the tone in their singing forward in their mouth. It gives it a little bit more brilliance, a little more of a pointed sound than a lot of other singers do. And I think Nancy Wilson did grow up listening to a lot of Dinah Washington, so I'm sure she, picked up on some of those nuances of her singing, and that's what we do as musicians. That's why we're doing this today, actually, because in doing very, very detailed listening, careful listening, we can absorb things from people's styles that will stay with us as players. And next time you're in your friend's car driving to the gig, carpooling, saving the environment, and they say, hey, listen to this recording, you might be able to know if it's whoever, Clifford Brown or Freddie Hubbard, which is helpful. Jazz musicians in general love to be able to recognize recordings. It's something that we kind of pride ourselves on. You remember in Downbeat magazine, they would have the blindfold test, right? There's always a blindfold test where they get some famous jazz musician in and then they play them a slew of like 7 or 8 recordings, and all they can do is listen, and then they have to know. They'll be like, oh yeah, this is John Coltrane on the Newport 63 album, such and such song, these are the musicians on it. It's a cool skill to be able to have, just to recognize musicians in recordings in general. But like I said, as you do very, very careful listening to pick up on nuances in people's styles, the nuances will creep their way into your playing without you even knowing it sometimes. You can see I'm sitting here at my computer. I'm in my dining room today, a little different setup, but we are looking at Nancy Wilson, Dinah Washington, and I want to tell you about the different nuances we're looking at in each of them. And then I'm just going to let the videos play. I've taken recordings from a couple of videos of live performances I found on YouTube to get around copyright laws. I can't play real famous recordings, but I found some really good concerts they gave. The first thing we're going to do is look at Nancy Wilson. Now, Nancy Wilson can sing with a straight tone sometimes, which is actually something that Dinah Washington rarely does. Let's listen to some examples. Okay, here's the first example of straight tone.
All the ripples in the sea.
She just held it out. See? No vibrato at all. Next example.
Never, never will I marry. Never.
I think it makes it so dramatic. Never, never will I marry. Then she brings it in. So dramatic to do it first with none. I love it. Next clip.
I'm Mary, born to wonder till I'm dead.
She added vibrato at the end, but how long did she hold that straight tone? Absolutely love it. Next clip.
Guess who I saw today, my dear?
maybe her most famous song, Guess Who I Saw Today. I love it. Just, guess who I saw. Straight. I mean, it's like straight talk somehow, isn't it? Just coming at you, like not masking anything. Boom, straight at you. I love it. One more great example.
Guess who I saw today, my dear?
She changes the melody later on in the song, so it's the exact same place, but she decides to use the exact same styling. Now, Nancy Wilson doesn't only sing with a straight tone. She has a beautiful vibrato that she brings in often. Let's listen to her vibrato a little bit.
It's time you knew.
Just as effective, but in an entirely different way. And then at the very, very dramatic point at the end of the song where we actually learn who she saw today, she brings out the vibrato.
I saw you.
So much more drama, isn't it? But in a different way. It's like the real drama. Up until then, those straight tones were just like questioning, like, let me tell you about something. And then the vibrato at the end, it's like, bam, nailed you, buddy. Now let's take a second and listen to phrases where she uses a straight tone and then vibrato in the same phrase. It takes great thought and control to be able to do this. I love this example.
I saw two people at the bar who were so in love.
Who were both of those straight tone, so in love. Then she adds the vibrato. So I love that she can do both things within one phrase. I don't know how much she thinks about it, but I'm thinking about it. That's what's important right now. I remember when I was starting off as a singer and I would do some competitions, I didn't have vibrato in my voice yet, but the clinicians would tell me to start my long notes with a straight tone and then add vibrato to the very end. They called it milking the phrase. And as I've gotten older, I think I've gotten better at it. It's harder to do when you're younger, but Nancy Wilson was an expert at milking the phrase. Let's listen to a couple of those right now.
You might as well surrender.
On the you adds it right at the end. Here's another. It's a great way to end even an up-tempo song or a slower song. It just makes a great ending to hold it out and then add vibrato on the end. And you're in control of when you do that. I mean, even saxophone players, right? Woo! Same. Here's another tiny thing that Nancy Wilson does all the time. She does this little pitch bend where she takes the note that she's aiming for and comes at it, usually from a whole step above it, kind of like that. Sometimes it's a little shake that she does, like that. Let's look at a ton of examples where she does that. It happens all the time.
You gotta have a dream if you don't have a dream.
This is in Happy Talk, and she does it almost every time she sings these words, if you don't have a dream. If you don't have a dream. And in this case, it's not a whole step. Like I said, it's a half step, just going from semitones above to the actual note. Here's another.
If you don't have a dream.
That was a little more controlled that time, a little slower. You don't, instead of you. She does it fast, she does it slow. Another song now.
Shut the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face.
She kind of did it 3 times. Cheer up, put on a happy face. Was that it? Put on a happy face. I can't do it like she does. But it was almost a trill. Here comes another one just right after that. Now,
just put on a
to another song, Never Ever Will I Marry. She does really cool phrasing here. Check it out. Pitch bends again.
Solitary, why's my world?
Why my world? This is on the tune I Believe in You. Listen to how she says the word vermouth.
Reminiscent of gin and vermouth.
So slight, but just a tiny little scoop down. Vermouth. Nancy Wilson. An element that Nancy Wilson took from Dinah Washington, I think, is the scooping up at the start of a note, where you and then land on your note. That's something that both of these singers do. But let's listen to Nancy Wilson.
I knew a girl so gloomy.
She actually does two things here. We've got da 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 da, so it's a scoop up twice in a row, and also she does a fall off. Fall off is something that Dinah Washington will see her do much more often. Hers are more dramatic than Nancy Wilson's. Listen one more time.
I knew a girl so gloomy.
Very subtle.
Solitary.
Solitary. Just a slight little scoop up. The last one we'll listen to is right here. There's a slight scoop right at the beginning.
All but falls apart.
Oh, just barely. You won't hear her do it nearly as dramatically as you do a lot of other singers. The video of Dinah Washington that I found is from 1958, and it's in Newport, Rhode Island. It's wonderful, but it has many good examples of the things that I think make Dinah Washington special as a singer. The first one that we're going to talk about is her vibrato. So unlike Nancy Wilson, you rarely find a moment where Dinah Washington has a straight tone. She has a big vibrato and she uses it often. Let's listen to some examples of it.
Well, your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
And another.
I don't hurt anymore.
It's a fast vibrato, isn't it? I don't think I can even do it. Something like that, super fast. Don't hurt anymore. And it comes right back. Here's another.
Romance in all of its glory.
It's nice to listen to different vowels. With the E, still big vibrato.
One kiss and I was aflame.
You never really hear Nancy Wilson with that big of vibrato. This is one way that you can absolutely tell them apart. Nancy Wilson's vibrato isn't that fast, and it's not that wide either. The space that it takes up isn't that wide. I'd call it a lot more dramatic from Dinah Washington, the vibrato anyway. Do you remember how we talked about Nancy Wilson scooping up to a note? Like that. Dinah Washington does that once in a while.
Only a moment ago.
It's very subtle. Only a moment. Just barely.
It's hard to believe I was lonely.
It's hard, just barely. This is not nearly, those scoops aren't as much as Nancy Wilson does it. So, if you hear some scoops at the beginning of a note, it's likely not Dinah Washington. But more often what Dinah Washington does, and this is probably the most telling thing if you're trying to pick her out, is that she scoops up at the end of a note. Very few singers do this, but Dinah Washington does it so well. You know, on her most famous recording, I think, which is Destination Moon, you can hear her, I think you can probably just hear it in your head, even if you think of it right now. Destination Moon, right? She just comes up on the ends of her notes, and it's so cool. Let's listen to her do that a bunch of times right now.
My lead baby, strange to see.
Strange to see. Two right there. Don't make fun of me. Don't laugh at me. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. Okay, now a bunch of them. It happens all the time.
Say you took the part.
Both things at once. We'll talk about fall-offs next, though.
Why not take all of me?
So subtle. Now.
I wanna lose them. Well, take my arms.
I love that. My arms. subtle. So Dinah Washington.
Since you took the best. He's so skinny, he's so drawn.
Yeah. Not only does she scoop the note up at the end of a note, ooh, like how we talked about, she also sometimes will do the exact opposite. And when she gets to the end of a note, she'll fall off of it. Like that. And she does it a lot. Let's listen to some of those.
Oh, well, your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
That's so nice. When I played this for my husband, he said, how would she know what note to end up on? Like, he wanted me to figure out the actual note that she ended up. Cried. I can't. I mean, maybe I could, but it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. It just matters that she fell. And how long does she fall? She's in control of it every time. That was a particularly long one. Cried. Yeah.
That once was my heart.
Yeah.
No use to deny. I wanted to die.
It's nice that she does it on the word die, isn't it? That's kind of textual painting. Wanted to die.
Now the diamond shines. The ring is fine.
2 times in a row. Very effective.
Out of nowhere you came. One kiss and I was aflame. Have you got eyes? Then tell me what's your name.
It's such a beautiful singing section, but she makes that fall off in the middle of it, and it's kind of all of a sudden like she's talking to you. The last thing I want to point out in Dinah Washington's singing is that oftentimes she'll do this trademark ending. I found 3 examples from it just on this video. So yeah, it's pretty trademark of her to put a tag on the end of the song. So you'll hear her go, why not take all of me? And you hear the band go, da-do-do, and then, why not take all of, and then here it is, this is her trademark ending, me. So you take the 5, the flat 3, and the 1. And sometimes you'll hear her alter it so that she takes the 6, the flat 3, and the 1. Me! And I do that sometimes too, especially that one with the 6, because I think it's really hip sounding. Let's listen to her do that.
Daddy, I get all of me. Yeah, come on, baby. Come on, Daddy, I get all of me.
You hear it? Me. 5, flat 3, 1. Let's listen to another one.
I don't hurt anymore.
Same exact thing. And one last one.
Yes, I love him, and I'll never let him go.
That one was even in the same key, wasn't it? Well, now that you've heard a whole bunch of these little nuances between the 2 singers, I hope that you'll be able to pick them out when you hear them on the radio now. And I hope also that you'll be able to take the things from these singers, their tiny little talents that maybe you've overlooked before in the past, and use them whether you're a vocalist or a player. Straight tone, vibrato, fall-offs, scoop-ups, beautiful phrasing ideas, signature endings. These are all the kind of things that turn you into a pro and not just a player. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time on Aimee Nolte Music.
Sit there, I'll count the raindrops falling on you. It's time you knew. You can count on only a moment ago. My bumpety heart was letting me know that this was no commonplace story.